We had a constructive meeting. We still have our significant differences, but we agreed to meet next Tuesday morning, and I think all four caucus leaders and I said we want a special session. We want to pass both the tax bill and the bonding bill that we can all agree on. That's the catch point, obviously, is agreeing on it, and we have significant differences, which were apparent at the end of the session, and they remain significant differences. So whether we can find common ground, find middle ground, still remains to be seen. But I'm willing to continue that. I think everyone here is willing to continue that effort.
So the Republicans continue to talk about wanting to compromise. The governor has had a letter about how to resolve this legislative session since June 1st. We asked today for the Republicans to actually put in writing a counteroffer. So we know where they stand, and they refuse to do so. That means that the Republicans have actually, in reality, not moved an inch. And I think that is the reality of how these conversations have gone. They talk a good game, but they don't deliver. And that's what got us into the problem a year ago. That's what got us into the problem this last session, is that they're not willing to commit to actually work through some things. And I understand the speaker, again, talked about the fact that, well, there's all these controversial issues. The fact of the matter is, we are paid to come down here to solve controversial issues. If it was easy stuff that we were coming down here to do, we'd be done way in advance every year. The fact of the matter, our job is actually solve controversial issues for Minnesota. And the Republican attitude seems to be we should just sweep those to the side because of the political risks that they might contain. Clearly, the Southwest Light Rail, and not just that, but transit in general, is a sticking point. But it's more than just a sticking point on that project. There is an ideological opposition that the Republicans have to transit. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to local communities all across Minnesota. It doesn't make sense to the business community or to labor. It doesn't make sense to the young millennials that we need in this state if we're going to succeed in the next 15 years. It's actually not a controversial issue. The fact of the matter is we should be doing it. Our counterparts all across the United States of America, all across the world, get this. I don't know why the Republicans can't understand it. So I will say, we had another conversation. It was not productive from my perspective. And if we're going to have a productive conversation going forward, I think it's incumbent on the Republicans to come back with an actual concrete written counteroffer to the governor's proposal, and then we can move forward.
Well, I wouldn't describe today's meeting as non-productive, but less productive than I would have liked for a travel down from Lake Vermilion. But I'm still hopeful. I think the speaker's tone was a little bit better today than it was last week. The minority leader in the Senate, however, picked up the confrontational role today, which he hasn't done previously. But still believe there's a path. It appears everyone's interested in having a special session. I think that's still a good thing. But I do think as the summer wears on, that desire is probably going to wane. So I do think there is some urgency to try to bring this to some resolution before the end of the month.
Are any of you working on some kind of compromise on Southwest Light Rail that could get this moving, and what might that look like?
We're gonna look at a couple at options that Republicans don't want to vote for it. We're going to look to see if there are other options that would might require some statutory change. But and then, again, this is about Metro Transit. This is about transit all over the metropolitan area that we're talking about here. Southwest Light Rail Line becomes the poster board for their oppositions because they think it's a good political issue for them in greater Minnesota. But this is really about all of Metro Transit, and it's about keeping pace with the economic development that we already see underway in the metropolitan area that is going to continue, and the fact that there are going to be 750,000 more people living in the metropolitan area in the next 25 years. And if we offer them nothing but already overly congested highways, we're going to really constrict our economic growth and our social vitality. So this is about something much more broad than that one rail line. But yes, we're going to look for options there. We're going to look for other scenarios to find, again, try to find middle ground. That's what I said all last week around the state. I'm willing to compromise. If they're willing to compromise, we'll be able to work this out. If they're not, well, then we won't.
I have to say, though, even if we come up, and we have been coming up with creative solutions to this over and over and over again, I have really very little faith the Republicans are interested in any solution.
Does that mean that there won't be a special session?
That's up to them, I guess.
The speaker said that the Met Council and the other agency want this money without legislative oversight. Are you prepared to do something to satisfy them that there would be more legislative oversight on Southwest Light Rail?
Well, they've been in session for the last 11 weeks. We're in session for the last year, all of last year, 5 months. This has been vetted every which way. The Met Council every which way. It's been vetted by, we have local chambers, starting with the Twin West Chamber, which was along the line. The local governments have all signed on, and then they had to go back and sign on again. I mean, if the legislature hasn't looked at this, and if they're unhappy because the legislature hasn't looked at it, I think they have no one to blame other than themselves. I mean, nobody's trying to hide this project. It's obviously a major project. So, if they want to have hearings on it, they could have asked for those, it seems to me, for the last 11 weeks. Now there's just one more pretext to avoid a resolution of it. But this project has been vetted and vetted and vetted and re-vetted more than anything I've seen in my time here.
And I just, we keep coming to Southwest Light Rail, but the fact of the matter is the governor also talked about important spending priorities that were left on the table at the end of session. For instance, St. Peter. We need money at St. Peter to actually make it safe. We just, as I understand it, had another horrific injury there very recently, and someone's in very critical condition. This is something we need to fix. The Republicans are not willing to spend that additional money to help St. Peter. They're not willing to put more money into Minsky and our higher education institutions that the governor asked for. So this is not just about transit. They have been unwilling to move on any of these items. And I think that is really the important thing for Minnesotans to understand. The governor has asked for, and I support, our caucus supports putting more money into St. Peter, both on the spending side and on the bonding side. The Republicans are unwilling to go there. That's what Minnesotans have to understand, that these are not projects that are just about Democrats and Republicans. These are projects that are good for Minnesotans. And if the Republicans, because they're so afraid of controversial issues, are not willing to step up for the good of Minnesotans, I just think that's a terrible situation for us to be in.
Senator, are you getting pressure from your incumbents to get special sessions so they have something to come back home and say, we did this?
No, I haven't. I've just had a lot of people contact me and say these dates are out of bounds. People are making summer plans, and so I think as in recent times, people have kind of reserved June. There's been, my wife says, why do they call them special sessions? They're not so special anymore. So I think people intentionally have kind of reserved June in the event the session doesn't get concluded in time. But I think once you get past the 1st of July, it gets very, very difficult. People have made plans with their families, and that is mostly what I'm hearing from people, is try to avoid these dates. But I haven't heard from members clamoring for a special session.
Is the last week in the month of June, is that workable for a lot of your members?
I don't know. I know Monday and Tuesday are bad next week. We've been kind of tracking when people are available, and we haven't gotten into July because we've gotten quite a bit of feedback from people saying, please stay away from July.
Senator Bakk, the speaker just said that he thought special session was unlikely before July 1st, and he wants 2 weeks warning for his members. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't think it takes 2 weeks. I'd be comfortable asking people to change travel plans a week out. I don't believe it needs to be 2 weeks. I think if we could reach some agreement next Wednesday, I think a special session could happen prior to 1st of July.
What would you say was productive about today's meeting? We've heard about the things that are still roadblocks, but what was productive? What ground did you make?
Well, I just think the tone of the speaker's voice, his willingness to consider some things that we talked about, alternatives to general obligation bonding, I thought he indicated he'd be willing to consider some other things if we could come up with some other options. I thought that was helpful.
Is Southwest Light Rail still the biggest single sticking point, or are there a myriad of things?
No way. It's not the single biggest sticking point. And that's absolutely clear. I mean, they want that to be it. I think, actually we'll take that on, because I think if you talk to business leaders and labor folks and local communities and people all across the state, they get that a comprehensive transportation bill is something. The fact of the matter is Republicans couldn't pass a long-term comprehensive transportation bill, which was their goal for the last 2 years. They can't even pass a one-year comprehensive transportation bill. That's what this is about. But again, it's not just that. They're not willing to compromise on fixing the issues at St. Peter, where people are actually dying and getting in critical condition. We have a woman in the hospital right now in critical condition because we haven't stepped up on that. They're not willing to invest in the economic engine of the state, which is the University of Minnesota. They're not willing to do any of these things. That's what this is about, their unwillingness to compromise. If they put a letter together with a counteroffer, that's when you can start to report that the Republicans are willing to compromise. Until that happens, it's all talk from Kurt Doubt and nothing else.
Thank you very much.
Governor, real quick, would you agree to any special session that does not include a solution to Southwest Light Rail?
I think we've got to have all of these solutions. Metro Transit. I think Metro Transit, I've heard from, the caucus leaders, both Majority Leader Dowd and Representative Thissen, that, their caucuses want a Metro Transit part of this solution. Again, I think focusing on Southwest Light Rail really narrows the issue down beyond what, Senator Stevens spoke very articulately about the East Metro. She represents part of Dakota and Washington. This has got to be a Metro-wide transit solution. And it really needs to be part of a comprehensive transportation bill, which we weren't able to achieve this session. But I'm not going to get into this and that and the other. We are where we are. We're not anywhere near being able to call a special session, and we'll see if we can move ahead next week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.